welcome to SVG TV's news for Wednesday, May the 27th, 2020. I am Bhavanav there with the details. 29 of the Vincentian crew members who were repatriated home yesterday on the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Vision of the Seas tested positive for exposure to COVID-19 using rapid tests. Speaking on radio this morning, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves confirmed the rapid test results, which was first reported by a Trinidadian news agency late last night. PM Gonsalves said in addition to the rapid tests, all 356 sailors did a PCR test for the presence of the actual COVID-19 virus, and the samples have been sent to Carrefour Laboratory in Trinidad.
And those disembarked, as advised by the Health Services Committee, that they put into the quarantine, but everybody has been tested PCR. And those tests should have gone down yesterday afternoon, sometime before 4 o'clock, to Trinidad. And we expect the results of those tests certainly by tomorrow morning. They may even come back today, this evening, but so you're not going to have any disembarking probably until tomorrow of the general body, because that PCR test, which is the gold standard, they will tell us, that test will tell us if anybody has to go into government-appointed quarantine or into isolation.
The Prime Minister said that he was contacted by a journalist in Trinidad and Tobago on the matter and requested that there be no scaremongering in the news report, pointed out that there were persons in the first batch of sailors repatriated home to SVG who tested positive for exposure to COVID-19 using rapid tests, and when the PCR tests were done, their results came back negative.
This boat is to go down to Trinidad. That they are on the rapid test, and the rapid test the antibodies to show not that you have it now to transmit it, but that you were in touch sometime, you were sometime exposed to COVID-19, and that they must not demonize the cruise ships, nor must they do anything which is scaremongering. They mustn't panic, because this is just something. We have had experience where persons have tested positive on the rapid, but on the PCR, they tested negative. Of course, they will have to do 2 negatives on the PCR in order to come out of the quarantine or isolation.
PM Gonsalves noted that Grenadian sailors were also aboard the Royal Caribbean cruise ship, and it was reported that of the 45 returning sailors, 1 tested positive with PCR. The Prime Minister also noted that there are more Vincentian sailors to arrive home on another Royal Caribbean cruise ship, which is currently docked in Barbados.
The same gentleman, Captain Zini, that you have about 100 of them in Barbados on different ships. But they couldn't put them on this one. And they're saying that they will bring them over on the 12th of June. But I've asked the Chief Medical Officer, and I've asked Bishop John to indicate to Royal Caribbean that we are prepared to receive our nationals next week, sometime next week, maybe by this time, so next week, if the Royal Caribbean schedule permits. So I don't want anybody to think that we are keeping our people there in Barbados.
There are 18 COVID-19 cases in SVG, 14 recovered and 4 active cases. Today, 216 persons were tested with 77 pending results. 29 persons are in public quarantine and 430 persons in self-quarantine. The SVG Teachers Union is expected to hold an emergency meeting in the light of what the President says are reports that plans are being made for more students to return to school in the coming weeks. After being closed for almost 2 months due to the threat of COVID-19, the first phase of reopening of schools commenced on Monday for grade 6s, Form 5s, TVET students who are preparing to set external examinations. While the SVG Teachers Union had earlier expressed concern for the safety of these teachers and students, in an interview with SVG-TV News yesterday, the SVG Teachers Union President Oswald Robinson commended the teachers for remaining true to their commitment to teaching by returning to the classroom. However, Robinson told our news team today via telephone interview that he has been getting information from reliable sources that the Ministry of Education is looking to have more students return to school, particularly those in grade 5, which he says was never discussed with the union. Robinson said he does not understand the rush for other students and teachers to return to the class at this time.
We have just heard, and we got it from creditable sources, that the Ministry of Education has been calling to start school with grade 5. They have not had any conversation with us on that. And we hope that they're not going to say that this one has been leaked out. Because if they acknowledge and value the input of the Teachers Union, you would have conversation with us. So we are seeking, we will be having an emergency meeting very soon. My executive, I'm just trying to make sure I have all my members of the executive. Then we'll move forward from there. Out of that conversation, we'll decide how we go forward. Even if we have to reactivate our Industrial Relations Committee, I am prepared to do that.
The Teachers Union President said the ministry needs to go back to the drawing board and highlighted issues which schools are facing.
That people could be getting called on the Teachers Union, which is an important stakeholder in education. We have no dialogue with the Ministry of Education on that. Given the fact that our teachers are already overwhelmed. In one school in town, there are 14 classes. And those schools that have to spread out their students, I know they don't have enough furniture. There are some schools, even the supply for the kitchen could barely carry the grade 6 class. We also have a problem with water shortage. Sometimes the water comes back after 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And for students who have to travel from far, they have to prepare themselves early to get a good shower to go to school.
Sanitization is key in the fight against COVID-19, and Robinson said this is lacking in some schools. And before more students return to school, these issues must be addressed.
Bearing in mind that they are not provided with masks, which is an obligation of the employer. There are some schools which are not even been sanitized. I have been getting calls every day of a particular school where nobody is sanitizing the furniture. Who has to do that? The teacher. And that is a responsibility of the administration of the school. We heard of a situation of one school that doesn't have any security guard. And there's nobody there to deal with sanitization.
Speaking on the reopening of schools on the NDP's Facebook Monday Live program, Opposition Leader Dr. Godwin Friday said that the hygienic practices and guidelines that were recommended by the Ministry of Health for schools to follow will be challenging for some. Dr. Friday said there are some schools facing problems with water shortage, particularly in the Grenadines, and the Ministry of Education must ensure that all schools have sanitary facilities and enough cleaning supplies.
The first concern, of course, is the hygiene, the personal hygiene, because that is for safety. The washing of the hands, the coughing in a way that protects from the spread of the disease. You can see how instinctively we put our hands to our mouth. I mean, this is something that is a human behavior, but we have to always try and resist it, and to remember and to teach one another that we must continue to do what they have, the CDC and our health officials here have indicated. Then the cleaning of surfaces, they've just said recently that the transmission of the virus on their hands and so on from surfaces is probably not as virulent as they had initially thought. It's not as easily transmitted, but it's still transmitted.
That's right.
That way. So we have to continue to clean the surfaces because the spread of the virus relies on that. The cleaning of the bathroom facilities and all of these things could only happen if we have water, which is where we started from.
Right.
Dr. Friday also expressed concern for the elderly and other persons at risk in the homes of students and teachers who are back in school, noting that they should be educated on how to interact with these persons when they get home.
What happens when the children leave the classrooms to go back home? What do we teach them? How do they interact with their the persons who may be in the vulnerable categories, the persons over 65 years of age who may have underlying conditions? How do they relate to them when they get back home? Because this is something I haven't seen much attention given to it in some of the guidelines, but certainly if we are of the view, and that seems to be the conventional wisdom now, the science, is that those persons in the older persons are more vulnerable, and the younger persons may be asymptomatic and unknowingly infect persons who are vulnerable to COVID-19 and could become seriously ill. So if that is the case, then the interaction of these children going from home, where they are within that environment, essentially fairly safe environment, going back into a classroom situation, even with all the precautions, we know children how they are, it will be difficult.
The opposition leader said the government should use the impact of COVID-19 pandemic to find ways to help improve the education sector and find another way to improve the level of teaching in schools and transform the entire education system.
We can't let the pain and suffering that we have now be wasted if we don't learn the lessons that are available to us to learn from it. And here we can say we can use the challenges in teaching now to say, let us figure out now how we can use the technology to really seriously improve the level of teaching in our schools, to transform the way in which teacher and students interact. This will mean that you have to have devices. The students will all have to have devices and not cell phones,
Right.
You can't really do much on the cell phone except receive the information. What you need really are, most countries now, Chromebooks are the thing that a lot of the school districts in the United States and other places are using, and some of them are being used here in St. Vincent, because they are relatively cheap and they are designed, it seems to be, for that particular purpose. But it's something that we need to address. Then you have to have a common platform. What software are the teachers using?
Meanwhile, on radio today, Prime Minister Gonzalez said he is generally pleased with the overall phased reopening of schools, which got started on Monday. Speaking on radio this morning, Dr. Gonzalez said that based on the feedback he received, the process has been going well.
Secondary school, we have brought in the CPA students in grade 6, and we have brought in those from the technical institutes, all to do their regional examinations. And that has worked marvelously. You haven't heard me comment adversely on the words of the president of the Teachers Union. But as I understood, he was our urgent caution. I don't know if it amounted to opposition. I'm saying what I heard, because you're saying, look, let's have some things in place. You're not sure those things are in place. But clearly, the things were in place, and we put them in place.
The Prime Minister said the school's feeding program has also been well received by students, and thanked the Mustique Charitable Trust for chipping in to provide lunch for fifth formers across SVG for an entire month.
Mustique Charitable Trust, providing 600 meals per day for each school day for the fifth formers until the 26th of June, amounting in total to 15,000 meals. And that's a very good thing which the Mustique Charitable Trust has done. That they amount to about close to 40% or so of the students. Of course, not all of them would have needed it, but they've helped to that extent. Across all 26 schools. Maximum number in any of the classes, any of the fifth form is 30.
In an interview yesterday with SVGTV News, President of the Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, raised the issue of some schools having no security guard during school hours on radio today. The matter was brought to Prime Minister Gonzalez's attention by a concerned parent. The Prime Minister gave the assurance that the matter will be dealt with.
If I know which schools there are no security, I will, if they have any idea, they should tell me, but I will ask Jimmy Prince today about that, both Jimmy and Julian Francis, because both of them together would be addressing the question of the watchmen and security. But the security should be there.
The Vincentian Transport Association, Vintus, yesterday received 200 masks from the organization Seroptimus International to ensure the safety of van drivers and by extension passengers. Newly elected president of Seroptimus International SVG, Ikamola Laborde, said, and Vice President Donnet O'Neill said that as an organization they are also doing their part to help in the fight against COVID-19.
It is our hope that this will be an impetus for all minibus drivers to wear masks to help protect the public and also to help to encourage the public to also wear their masks to protect themselves and others.
Normally, Seroptimus Internationally, we normally deal with empowering women and empowering girls, but because of the COVID situation, we thought it best sometimes you forget certain sectors of the public, so we decided we're going to go to the forgotten sector, the minibus drivers, and we're going to assist them however we can.
President of Vintus, Roy Adams, said that the gesture is timely and appreciated.
President outlined the objective is to support women and empowering women, but to reach out to an industry that is dominated predominantly by men. They show a real sense of understanding of the macro impact of public transportation in St. Vincent. There are other potential opportunities where we can distribute these to our members. There are the sanitation points that are happening now. We can utilize those stations because we know buses have to come to sanitize, and we can work with the Ministry of Transport to utilize that area to hand out some masks. That's one. Or we can simply just announce a meeting where we can distribute them to our members.
Adams said while he understands wearing masks all day may pose a challenge for some drivers, for the safety of Vintus is encouraging members to wear them.
There are some who take the issue of wearing masks very seriously. Wearing a mask for an entire day is obviously a significant challenge as well. So with some education and there has been lots of material out there about how to wear a mask properly for the entire day. Hopefully those information are being consumed by our members and operators so that we can be able to help to protect ourselves. And so I want to encourage them that once they are recipients of these masks, they can do all they can to utilize them in the most efficient way.
The Traffic Department of the RSVG Police Force has expressed concern about the reckless behavior of some teenage pedal cyclists. In a news release today, the traffic branch said since the suspension of schools due to COVID-19 global pandemic, it has observed a trend among a number of these teenage pedal cyclists who have been riding in groups negligently, recklessly and at speeds in a manner that is dangerous to the general public. The police news release said that it also observed that these teens are riding without the appropriate gears such as warning lights, devices, lights, brakes and helmets. Head of the Traffic Department, Superintendent Kenneth John, said on observation of these occurrences, officers will signal these teens to stop. However, they will divert into traffic gaps or bypass roads to avoid the officers. Superintendent John stressed that under the Bicycle Act, these incidents are offenses and encouraged parents and guardians to be vigilant and to ensure that they meet all the requirements and adhere to before these young cyclists are allowed to go riding, noting that these guidelines are in an effort to reduce any repercussions that can result in serious injuries or even death. And the present drought conditions is not only leading to crop and economic losses, but also creating psychological problems for farmers who rely heavily on the agriculture sector for their livelihood. That's according to Agriculture Officer Donald Jackson as he explored the socio-economic impacts associated with the dry weather conditions being experienced in the country and region-wide.
Comfort zone, we cannot perform to the best of our ability. We are stressed out, and this stress has serious implications for our well-being, and as such, the farmers are faced with multiple challenges on their hand, and many of them, in most cases, will need to have like some form of counseling, maybe by their church pastors and things of that sort. So this psychological part of it put the farmer under a lot of undue emotional distress during this period of drought and things like that. So, and many of them want to know where the next meal will be coming from, how they're going to finance their school education for their children, and to meet their payments, maybe by their leftover mortgages and other higher purchases that they would have sustained. And to be able to reinvest into agriculture would also be a serious issue as well.
Jackson said along with the loss of employment for those who rely on farmers for work, the agriculture sector is also reeling from the impacts of COVID-19.
We not only have to talk about the dry weather, we have the impact of the COVID-19, in which many of the farmers who used to supply, the vendors to supply, to carry produce to the grandins, those markets are no longer available. So a substantial amount of revenue that used to be gained from these from the tourism sector are no longer here. So there's a double-edged sword that the farming community has to grapple with at the present moment, and their need of whatsoever assistance, that whether it be through counseling or financial wise, that can be brought to alleviate the present and difficult condition that they are currently living.
The agriculture officer said one solution can be the provision of grants to farmers, which will allow them to be more resilient to the current conditions.
Even of dry conditions, and to be able to help them to sustain their livelihood, especially in the rural communities and things of that sort. Because government cannot provide social assistance to everybody, and if the farmer can able to meet his financial needs by being engaged in farming, I think that's something that we have to support. At least it leads with help in our gross domestic product as well contribution, and towards the whole rural development well-being for a vast majority of persons within these communities. So assistance by whatever funding agency in terms of grants, because many of our farmers are not in a financial position to be able to access some of these technologies that we actually recommend to them. So where this can be facilitated through organization grants and things of that sort, I think that will be greatly welcomed by the farmers.
And the internet has proven itself to be a useful tool in facilitating learning during this period of COVID-19. This as many teachers and students have been participated in virtual classrooms for lessons from kindergarten up to the secondary level. Speaking with our news team, representative of the Ministry of Education, Nicole Franklin, said a lot of work was done to establish the online learning platform for teachers and students, with about 800 groups to accommodate 17,000 plus users. Franklin, however, noted that only around 3,000 users have been able to access the learning platforms, due to a number of reasons, including a lack of devices and internet service. She said work is being done to help improve each student with a tablet along with access to the internet.
You have schools offering other subject areas also. They're doing the sciences. In terms of the primary school I'm speaking here now, you have HFLE and so on, and they give other subject areas priority. So they have a proper timetable that they're working with, and students are engaged. At the secondary level, you have a full slot in terms of what children can do also. The entire program is there, just like a regular school day where they have work going on. Well, Currently, we know that in terms of the whole idea of access to devices, we know that the government is currently trying to, supply all students, and I said all students, with a tablet so that they can have access to this learning. And also there is the whole idea of having a cheaper rate for the internet, for internet connectivity also.
The education officer said though Microsoft Teams is the predominant platform used, some schools have been using other e-learning platforms based on their comfort level of the students and teachers.
Persons have difficulty, especially with maybe the younger students also. Some persons are using, they may feel comfortable with, let's say, using WhatsApp, okay? And students are, they're able to log on easily to WhatsApp. So some students have been receiving support through WhatsApp, and others through Zoom, and so on. Even at the secondary level, we would have allowed the use of preferred platform. For example, some persons may even use Moodle or the G Suite for education. So where persons are comfortable, they are allowed to use whatever platform. But predominantly, we are using the Microsoft Teams throughout, and we have already completed the training and so on in about 50 schools, primary schools, and 10 schools, secondary schools. So they are all onto the program, and we have completed the module 1 of this training, and we are currently on to module 2, working with teachers also.